Cool. Hi everyone. So I'm Trevor, and
I'm Alex.
And we're on the Digital Transformation Agency's DesignSystem team. And one of the things we really want to talk about is doing the hard work to make it simple. So we want to make sure that our design system is really easy to use for people and that they can adopt a lot of the hard work behind the scenes. So why are we both here today? I'm a designer who can code, and Pagey.
I'm a developer who can design. And we sort of meet in the middle in this sort of angry but like energetic sort of environment, and we get happy at the end of it, I guess.
So we argue about a lot of things.
Sometimes.
Yeah. And this is good because this is kind of where we feel like the design system should be. We should be having those conversations so that this sort of friction that we're having is a lot easier for other people. Why is the DTA looking at a design system? I think Gary touched on it a lot, but it's also for the other reasons that we've heard tonight. We have a lot of inconsistent websites. If you've ever used a government service, you probably know that. Government has a lot of organisations. You tend to think of it as just government, but there's all these different organisations working independently. So we want to make sure that we're giving them the tools to work efficiently. Accessibility, we heard about that again tonight. So, what we're trying to do is bake that in as early as possible into the work that we're doing. Better browser support. We, as government, we still have to supply services to as many people as possible. So that legacy browser support is important to us. Shared work and user needs. I mean, we want that consistent experience that we just saw from the Westpac stuff. What we'll cover today is really just the core foundations of our design system and where we're going with it. It's still early days for us, so we'll show where we're going with it. We want colours to be consistent across all the different the application of colour, but we don't want to prescribe you must use this colour. So the same branding thing we just saw from Westpac. It's good that we followed them.
Yeah.
Fonts. Consistent font sizes across products, but we're not really prescribing that your heading should be this size or that your your button should be this size. We're trying to give people the ability to use consistent sizes and then spacing. We want standard units, but not prescribed spacing. Colour system.
Yeah, colours. So one of our inspirations for our colour system, I guess, was, again, old mate Nate. So it's who we refer to as Nathan Curtis. A few of our talkers have already referred to him. He's a thought leader in this area, but he sort of talks about how you can sort of mix light and dark and sort of make this sort of, infrastructure of reusable components that also inherit these colour systems.
So again, like the Westpac thing, when we looked across a whole bunch of our products and properties in government, we've got the same sort of problem. We've got these inconsistent experience across the board. So we started by just looking at how people are using colour. And one of the things we sort of found is that we've got clearly from accessibility, we've got the colour contrast ratio, foreground, background. By the way, we're going to get into some real shop talk, so I hope you're ready. So foreground, background colours will have to pass accessibility, and what we're trying to do is make sure that people can just use them out of the box like that. So instead of having a blue, and do I use blue with dark grey? Do I know that that's going to pass accessibility? We've labelled them foreground, background, so it's pretty clear. You pair those together. Pagey's going to kind of talk about some code stuff in a minute. So brace yourself. Basically, so this is what it looks like in our system at the moment. We've got the foreground colours that pass on background colours and the light and dark theme.
Yeah, so with this sort of colour system, we can also go, hey, just like Westpac was showing before, hey, I don't really like that dark green, or our brand is actually not dark green, it's purple. So we can go and apply purple to the system and actually get back new colours. So if we look back at this slide, the borders in the green one are actually slightly green, and the borders in this one are actually slightly purple. So you actually are mixing together that colour to generate a new colour. How this all kind of works, we've gone and used Sass. So Sass is our programming language that we're using. It turns into CSS. What that means is people can override colour variables. So at the top we can see someone's gone and added their text colour to be white, their background colour to be purple, and then they've imported our design system. In the next section, you can see here are our default values. So our background colour is white, but we're actually changing it to purple because we don't have the exclamation mark default. And the text colour is a darker colour, but we're changing it to white. Then from those colors, we actually go and do a whole bunch of stuff to them. So we'll actually darken them 3 times. So we get 3 different shades of our background. So 4 different shades of our background. So normal background, a darker background, and then a darker background. And then we also do a muted and a border, and that's mixing the foreground color with the background color. So if someone's background color is purple and their foreground color is white, we sort of get a light purple color. The sprinkle on top of that is, because we're generating all these colors, we're not sure if these are going to be accessible, and we're also not sure if the people importing the colors are going to be accessible. So we run a function on top of that to sort of test that foreground color and that background color to meet accessibility. So what that kind of looks like is, Trevor here has come to me with his new design. It's got pink text and purple color. I don't really understand accessibility that much, and I just chuck in the pink text and the purple color. What that actually does is it will go up and down the brightness scale, so the HSL, by a certain number of %, until you kind of hit an accessible contrast. So you can see at the top, the darkest background color on that pink is actually now accessible. So we'll return in our system that dark purple, but you can actually see that it's quite similar to that original color. So we try and keep that color as close to the original value as possible.
Coming soon. So one of the things we're looking at, and again, to Jane's talk actually, is making sure that this is baked in. So what we want to do is have the system itself generate the output, but also be able to show people, it's probably hard to see on this monitor, but be able to show people what it looks like in color blindnesses. So if they're deciding to pick some colors, they also get to see that, which is something that's like super important to us. And this filter that we'll be applying will be done in SAS as well, so that you're able to input those values and see that straight away. Topography and spacing. Designers, there's a lot in the room. We saw some closet devs. Typographic scales. So it's useful to have those typographic scales because we want to be able to show the different sizes of typefaces in quite high contrast to each other. So your body text is a different size to your heading. But it's hard in CSS because we shouldn't be using fixed pixel sizes. Our design tools actually use fixed pixel sizes. And in our case, we need a fallback for rem because of old browsers.
So, Trevor again, my design friend, comes up to me and he says, hey, I need to add some fonts to our system and I also want them to align to a grid. This can be problematic, one, because we use system fonts, so that means a different font for every system. It also means for our users that they get the font really fast. There's no load times or anything like that. It's just going to load. But if we're trying to snap that font to a grid, we're not sure where that sort of sits because it's changing all the time. So we do a little bit of magic that goes times the font size times the line by the line height, get out the height. If the height snaps to our grid, good. If the height doesn't snap to our grid, we actually round it to a grid unit. So you can kind of see in the first example, 48 pixels with a 1.25 leading gets you 60 height. That snaps to our grid of 4 units, so we would actually return a line height of 1.25 or something like that in that case. In the second example, with 18 pixels and 1.5 line height, that would give us a 27 pixel height normally, but we wouldn't want that because that doesn't snap to our 4 pixel grid. So we then actually do a bit of maths and go, hey, make it 28. You want to talk to this?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, as Paige just explained, we've got the 4 pixel unit, that's our default. We've got the sizes which we've determined on kind of a typographic scale of 1.25. And then, well, it's rough because we're still trying to round to those 4 pixels. The user can then go in with the function, select these sizes. So it means that our designers and developers are no longer talking about the values. Again, to Justin's talk, we can actually talk about the size. So I want my component to have a heading size of extra large. We no longer need to worry about the actual inputs. We just know that it's going to come out at a size that fits our grid.
Yeah, so this is that maths which I was talking about. If anyone's super curious, it pretty much just goes line height, font size, the unit, and then rounds it to that unit. So it's maths.
Well.
We don't need to go there.
Vertical rhythm is another thing designers will want to talk about, and that's kind of the spacing on a page. So where my eyes can rest, does it look consistent as it goes down the page? And it's hard in code because we often don't know what elements will follow what, particularly in a CMS or something that's getting generated. You might have 2 paragraphs and then a heading, or 2 headings and then a paragraph. And we don't know what that order is. So one of the things we're looking at, and this is a fantastic article, a list apart has it up there, you can Google that one, but it's lobotomized hours, which comes from the CSS selector. And what we're doing is making sure that our elements don't have a defined margin bottom or a defined margin top. We only set margin top when it follows another element, which you can see in that third picture there. It's an amazing article. It's really good to look at, and it falls back to IE8, so it works quite well for us. Baseline grids. Another thing designers are interested in is lining things up. And so one of the things that's difficult is that in CSS, there's no sort of concept of where your actual baseline is. And that's kind of the bottom of your text, the bottom line. There is, but it's complicated. System fonts also have an unpredictable X height. So we don't know where that font's going to be, which is sort of why we were doing that rounding before.
Yeah, so we've sort of, again, we've been like, hey, Trev's given me this problem. We've gone, hey, here's a code solution. So we've gone and removed the idea of pixels, rems, percentages, and all this from our spacing and from our typography. We now try and use something that we've called a unit. So if you put 1 unit in, you get back 16 pixels and 16 rem. So you kind of see in that top example, we include AU space, margin top, minus 0.5 unit, and in the bottom, that's the rendered out CSS, which would be margin top minus 8 pixels, margin top minus 0.5 rem. And that's based off our grid of 4 pixels.
And yeah, the reason it's there twice is for that IE8 fallback or anyone that doesn't support rem.
Yeah, so you can sort of see how it works here. Again, a whole bunch of mass. I don't think we have to go there. We can talk later if you want to actually know.
Yeah, and so I guess like they're just the basics of the foundations, which we call core in our design system. But these are then used to build any other component from. So we use this consistent application of color. So we're no longer defining colors themselves. We're saying that this is a background, this is a foreground, this is a link. We've got the scales that are coming out so that designers and developers can talk about just the actual value, the label or the variable and no longer the value, which means that can change later as well. And it also gives us that flexibility across departments. And the spacing. So we now have this really nice aligned spacing that comes out of the box, falls back to accessible, scalable type sizes, and you don't have to think so much about it, which is kind of doing the hard work to make it simple, hopefully. That's kind of it. We've got time for questions, I think. So if anyone's got any. We've got a question.
Yep.
Thanks for the great talk.
Do you want the mic?
Yes.
Quick.
Question is, so this is great, and this is a bit of a kind of digital HTML, CSS, SCSS world. How do you connect the, like say, Sketch and all the design tools world with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something we're actually looking at. Our design system uses React components for, as well as just the HTML. So we're looking at, the question was raised earlier about the React Sketch plugins, and we're actually looking at that as an option for being able to take the code and put it straight into design software so that we're no longer having to manage that. Yeah. That's where we're... And back? No, we haven't worked that out yet. If you know, yeah.
I guess Trev talks to me, he's like, here's a design, and I go, here's a code, and then we go, how do we make that better and reusable, and, you know, how can we solve this problem? Because quite often we'll be like, Trevor, like, I want this font to snap to this grid, and I'm like, cool, here, I just set the margin to 2 pixels top, and now it snaps. But that's not solving in a reusable, robust way that we can share with other people. So it makes it really hard. So that's where we go in and we'll go, we need to solve this problem in a more fundamental way, so we'll do things.
So we're basically trying to do designing in code first, and then just have things that come out of it in Sketch.
Any more questions? Come on, one more.
Cool. It is open source. It's like I said, it's still early days, but we wanted to get it out the gate so that people can check it out and comment on it and get involved. And you're more than welcome to try and help us out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.